Good afternoon and welcome to the City Council Informational Meeting. The meeting will start in 60 seconds.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Carnegie for this afternoon, Tuesday, October 14th, informational meeting. Great crowd in attendance here. Great to see everybody, and welcome everybody that might be watching on CityLink or on the internet live. Appreciate your interest. Today we have 3 presentations, quite interesting discussions, and we'll begin our council or informational meeting with City Council open discussion. Councilors, anything you would like to bring to us? Councilor Jameson.
Thank you. I was just going to update some of the other councilors regarding the South Dakota Municipal League meeting we had last week. Good attendance by several other councilors, Rolfing, Karski, Erickson. Sorry. Anyway, and some city directors I saw. Tracy Turbeck was there, Mark Cotter was there, some other city employees. But it was a good conference, you know, and I don't know if everybody's very aware of what we do with the Municipal League, but it's a statewide association of all the municipalities in the state. Sioux Falls being the largest city within the organization, we're a little different than the other cities. Our struggles are different. Sometimes it's the matter of adding zeros to the end of some of the equations and the problems that other communities have. Our numbers are bigger than theirs. Our problems are similar in nature, but anyway, there's a great teamwork that happens at these conventions and meetings where we get to know the other communities. We talk to a lot of the other city councilors and mayors and directors, and had a good time in Spearfish, learned a lot. The biggest thing, though, I think if I could give you a takeaway from the convention, the conference, is when we go to the state legislature to change or pass a new state law, having Sioux Falls involved can sometimes be a problem. But as a group, together, collectively, when we go and ask for a change, it really helps. And that's the big thing that happens with this conference, is it builds a lot of relationships. So a good conference, and I think Councilor Erpenbach has been the trustee member of the board for the last 2 years ago. I've been the member last year, and with the help of Tracy Turbeck, I was reluctantly reappointed as a trustee. But I enjoyed very much, and I encourage the rest of the councilors to be further engaged. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Jameson, for your time and commitment to serve on that board. It's another one of those things that fall in the job description of city councilor that we just don't always realize what needs to be done. And I know Councilor Rolfing was up working till wee hours of the morning, working on with other cities and municipalities. So, yeah. Any questions of Councilor Jameson or any of the other councilors that attended this meeting? Councilor Anderson.
Not a question, but I had planned on attending an economic development meeting with the Municipal League. They've set up a meeting on November 21st in Pierre.
Good. Thank you. Councilor Erickson.
I think it's in Oklahoma, right? Or is it in Oklahoma? Yeah. I was also asked to be included in some of the discussions and was recruited to be a part of that task force as well, so I plan to attend as well.
So that's in Oklahoma by Chamberlain, not in Oklahoma.
Yes,
right? Okay.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure. Yeah. Okay. Other questions? Other open discussion? All righty then. Thank you, councilors. We will start then with our Basin 13 cost recovery, and I think Chad Heavey with our city engineer will lead us off. Welcome, Chad.
Good afternoon. I'll just introduce Ryan Johnson. He's our sanitary sewer principal engineer, and he will take you through the Basin 13 cost recovery, and then we'll both be here to answer questions.
Thank you. Welcome, Ryan.
Well, thank you again, Ryan Johnson with the City Engineering Department. I'm here to present the Basin 13 sanitary sewer cost recovery. To begin with, what is a cost recovery? And we'll get into the actual geographical Basin 13 in just a minute. The cost recovery is a method of equitably reimbursing the city the cost for expanding the trunk sanitary sewer collection system. So if I were to compare the trunk sanitary sewer to the street network, I would compare it to Cliff Avenue, to Minnesota Avenue, to 41st Street. It's the larger streets that collect traffic from the developments and get them to where they're going. This trunk sewer collects wastewater from the developments in smaller areas to a larger diameter pipe and eventually carries it to the wastewater treatment plant. So the cost recovery formula, which is up there now, is I'll refer to it several times throughout this presentation. The project cost is pretty straightforward. It's the cost that's associated with the design and construction of all the projects associated with the cost recovery. The acres are a little unique, and we'll go through those in just a minute, but basically it's the entire area that this serves. And from that, we're able to determine the cost recovery amount, which is our attempt at equitably proportioning out the overall cost on a per acre basis. For the Basin 13 sanitary sewer, the overall project cost was $13.8 million. The total area served was just over 3,300 acres. And for us, the cost is $4,100 or $4,178.96. So people that are benefiting from this service, before they would connect to it, we would say that's great, you're in a new area. Prior to connection, you need to pay $4,178 for your proportionate share. In 2006, a study was completed which identified the preliminary areas, went through a series of public meetings. A resolution was passed to finance the project, and at that time, all costs were estimates, and we came in at about $4,250 an acre. Today, the evaluation has been completed, and we're near $4,178. So that's ultimately what we're really going to talk about is this project cost, and finalize that on next Monday's council meeting. So again, the final cost recovery amount is $4,178.96 per acre. Collecting the overall infrastructure cost isn't anything new that the city has done. We have cost recoveries dating back as far as 1993. There are 11 of them in place now. The most recent one is the area in yellow to the right of your screen. That's the east side cost recovery. Not so long ago, it was the area in purple, which is the west side sanitary sewer cost recovery. Then you see several miscellaneous smaller cost recoveries that have been completed over the years. And it's a little tough to see, but in the upper right-hand corner, you can see some of the basin cost recovery amounts. What we're here today to talk about is the actual Basin 13, which is an area in blue that's kind of in the north and west part of town. Just to give you a little more detail on that area, the area in purple and green is the total cost recovery area. It's just over 3,300 acres again. I-90 is to the north near the top of the screen. I-29 generally runs through the middle of the image, Russell Street. You can see the airport to the right. The red line shows the limits, the Sioux Falls annexed limits. You'll notice that there are two areas that are unannexed in the green area. The actual sanitary sewer, and I don't know if we have a pointer, it's that yellow line that that's near 60th Street North and kind of follows kitty corner through the crosshatched area. Thank you. Starts there and heads generally straight south. That's the new service area. And we continue south to a large regional lift station that's just west of the zoo. To get into some of the unique pieces of these cost recovery areas, this area in purple was developed several years ago, late 60s, 70s, and 80s. It was previously developed. They installed the sanitary sewer collection system at that time. Since that time, they've paid their rates and fees and charges, which covers operation, maintenance, and replacement of that infrastructure. With this project, we improved that infrastructure, replaced aging infrastructure, eliminated several smaller lift stations that were in need of replacement. And so because this is previously developed, the city will cover the cost of that proportionate share. Going on to the newly served area, the area in green, you'll notice that the trunk sewer, that gold line, goes through a cross-hatched area, and that's the airport runway protection zone. There's not, the way it's zoned, that area cannot be built on, so that it'll never provide sanitary sewer service to the collection system. So even though it runs right through the middle of it, that area will not be charged the cost recovery amount and was pulled out of that area formula when we were calculating it. The areas that are unannexed, that are currently unannexed, are included in it, the cost recovery. When those areas are annexed and when they connect to the sanitary sewer, that would be the time for those areas to pay the cost recovery. One other area not shown on here is what we call our best management practices. These are for our stormwater lagoons or stormwater detention and retention basins. There's one near Spellerberg Park that stormwater drains into, slowly drains out. Those areas, again, will never be built on. We have a pretty solid number for that, and so that area has been pulled out of the overall cost recovery formula. Again, the overall project cost covering design, construction, administration, and total construction is $13 million, $13.8 million. The previously developed land of 2,200 acres and the benefiting property of just over 1,000 resulted in total cost recovery service area of just over 3,300 acres. Again, our total cost recovery amount after the evaluation was completed recently was $4,178.96. In 2006, when this was estimated, the projects and the area was known, the cost recovery amount was estimated at $4,250. That was the trigger mechanism that allowed us to construct this project, and now we're here to say we finalized those projects and are ready to move on to the next step, which would be implementing this and being able to recapture the cost of that infrastructure. Just a couple of unique things that are included in the overall evaluation. Boundary adjustments. The boundaries, the areas generally follow geographic areas, kind of follows the high point of a basin. Occasionally, that can be expanded at that time, and at a request, we will look at that area and what the flows are contributing to the sanitary sewer If there is available capacity in the sanitary sewer, we will say, yes, you can add. And that can be done by the Director of Public Works, and they would have to pay the proportionate cost recovery amount prior to connection again. Cost recovery payment, as you folks are all well aware that Sanford has built some buildings out there. We haven't collected on those. When the cost recovery has been accepted, we will invoice those properties and we will collect on that $4,100 per acre. Areas that are not currently annexed, those rural residential areas, once they are annexed, once they connect to the sewer or request to connect to the sewer, that would be the time for us to send out an invoice and collect on that area. For the most part and for the large majority of the property owners out there that are undeveloped, when they develop and when they submit a plan to connect and when they plat, which is generally just prior to connecting, we will send an invoice for that $4,178. As far as cost recovery deferrals, there's two mechanisms that would allow for a deferral on a cost recovery, and they only apply to those two areas that are unannexed right now. If a property is over an acre, there are a handful of them that are, they would only be responsible for paying that 1 acre at the time of connection. Now, if that property subdivides, redevelops, another building goes on that would be the trigger to collect that difference in overall cost. Side note, we only charge on the fraction of an acre. So if you own 1.58 acres, we would charge 1.5 acres accordingly, 5.8 acres accordingly. Other mechanism for cost recovery deferrals if you go to it's a cost-based deferral or income-based deferral, and we look at those on case-by-case basis, and if you meet certain federal requirements or guidelines, you would be eligible for a deferral in that cost recovery. As far as payment options, we do send out an invoice for a lump sum payment, and developers certainly have the option of doing 5 installments, and interest would be charged after the first installment. Otherwise, interest is not accruing while the cost recovery is on the books. Where we're at today, again, the resolution of necessity that allowed for financing for this project was adopted in 2006 after a series or several public meetings, support from the Infrastructure Review and Advisory Board, and resolution by City Council. The design and construction of all of the phases of the projects were completed from 2006 to 2013. Since that time, we've done a final evaluation and reviewed the cost and area. We presented it to the Infrastructure Review and Advisory Board and gained their support on September 3rd. We also followed up with a public input hearing on September 10th with very few comments that came out of that meeting. Of course, we set the notice of hearing on October 7th, which will be on October 20th. And we're here today on October 14th presenting the evaluation to you. So if you have any questions, I would be glad to try to help answer them.
Yes, I have a number of questions. First of all, at this present time, how many landowners are going to be paying?
It's in the evaluation, and I believe it was close to 90, and I think Diane has that number, but it's close to that 90 number. Of that.
You said something 90?
Yeah.
Okay. And then also too, the interest that you mentioned in that point number 5 there, is Sanford going to be paying interest? I thought we passed a measure exempting them?
I'll take that one,
Yeah.
Councilor Staggers. That zero interest on that assessment was for the construction of the roads,
Okay.
Benson and Bob Holla. This is for this trunk line that got installed. So they're aware of this. They've been aware of this since we began the project. When this is approved by you guys, then we will send Sanford a bill. They will have the option then to pay this off at one time or pay it off in 5 installments. And interest will apply for this cost recovery.
And how much interest will that be?
You know, I don't know offhand. I know it's 2% plus I'd have to ask Tracy, but I'm going to assume it varies from 5 to 6%.
Okay.
But I don't have that exact number for you.
And also, just one other quick question. I was trying to remember some of the details of when this was passed a long time ago. Is this probably one of the most expensive projects we've had like this because of the court site that we encountered and had to do all kinds of
No, I would say the most expensive cost recovery we've probably done to date has been the east side.
Okay.
That was shown in yellow, and then probably following that it was the west side.
Oh, okay.
So those I'd say this is probably the third or fourth most expensive one we've done.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Rolfing.
Thank you. Ryan, has there been problems, or maybe Diane can answer this too, been problems in the past with people not being able to afford paying this or, paying it in that 5 years, either as a lump sum or paying it off over 5 years? My thinking, well, go ahead, but people generally, or maybe Chad knows.
You know, historically, there hasn't been. I mean, most of these instances it's new development, and so it's
added into the cost.
You know, even when we're reviewing their preliminary plans, and they haven't even annexed yet, particularly, or they have annexed, they haven't started any development work. We're noting on the plans that these cost recoveries are there and due at the time of platting, and that's why also we have that 5-year plan out there. But historically, we haven't had much issue on collecting this.
Oh, it's not like an annexation like we're dealing with, and the bills can get pretty high for
No,
individuals.
and you know, just to expand on our public meeting we had out at the Sanford Pentagon on September 10th, I believe, most of the property owners there were in the annexed areas, and they had the most questions, and most of their questions were about annexation. So most of the other property owners have been communicated with regarding this since '06.
Along the same line, Chad, will this open up future land for development for annexation, or it looked like this is pretty landlocked where it...
No, it has certainly opened up land for annexation and development. And another thing that Ryan touched on is that we eliminated 4 lift stations, which, lift stations, they run on electricity. You got to have backup power. They have to be maintained. They have to be checked. They have to be operated. And so what we've done through this project is eliminated those lift stations, and now a lot of that flow, or the majority of it, flows by gravity. And, we've talked about several times with the sewer system and the Tuthill lift station and the risks that are involved when you have lift stations. So from that standpoint, us retiring 4 was a big positive for the city.
So along the same lines, then, the amount that we're reimbursed per acre, that assumes everything that would be opened up to development, even though it's not currently annexed, or not?
We've looked at the service area, and the new service area to be served is maybe, I think it's, how many? Just over 1,000 acres. So thus this project has opened up just over 1,000 acres for development.
So we won't be reimbursed for that until it's annexed and developed.
Right. It's
so we do carry that on our books.
This is a cost recovery, and so if you never hook up to the system, you never pay that. What the resolution of necessity did in 2006 is basically put all those properties on notice that something's coming. What this again will do when this is passed, again, the notification will be put on the property so they know it's there, but if they're out there annexed 5 years from now and they're still there on a septic system, they're not paying their interest. Nothing's going on. It's just, it's not a lien, but it just puts them on notice that if they're going to connect to the city sewer system, this is due. And if they never connect, they never pay.
And
So
my last question, if I may, the cost now and the cost in 5 years are the same thing? We
Right.
don't charge interest, or we don't?
no. The
Doesn't-
only time interest would apply here is if you do connect to the system and you elect to pay it off over 5 years versus in a one-time lump sum payment.
Yeah. Counselor Steggers?
Yeah, just to clarify one thing, Chad. Somebody mentioned cost recovery comes with platting. But then also, cost recovery is when you get hooked up. Did I get something confused here?
I think we're talking about the same thing. There may be a lot out there that's already platted.
Okay.
Like in the unannexed areas, those lots are platted and have a legal description. They wouldn't pay because they're not going to plat. So they would pay at the time of connection to the system.
So if you're not platted, then when you plat, you pay then, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so
Okay.
it just depends on if you're platted or unplatted. Anything new that develops out there, when it comes time to plat, they'll get this bill.
Okay, got it.
All righty. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate it. No other questions. We'll move on to our next presentation. Mr. Cooper from Director of Planning and Building Services is here. We've had installation of some new financial software that might have caused a few hiccups in our building services. So just here for a report on how things are moving along. Welcome, Mr. Cooper.
Thank you, Mike Cooper, Planning and Building Services. I think we were asked by members of the council to come back and give you more of a general update of where we're at with our building permit process. And we've been working with our finance team the last few days just to help, I think, give us more of a historical analysis of what some of the trends have been and then how we're going to benchmark those as we move forward, not only with this building construction season, but going into 2015 and beyond with EnerGov. And the story that we have to tell you today, I think, is very positive. It's a very good news story. And we'll start out with the roofing permits because I think that's maybe one item that maybe started the discussion about where we're at with the backlog or with the construction in general for this year. In a typical year, in recent years, a typical year for roofing permits would be anywhere from 2,000 to 2,500 permits for the year. Because of our recent hailstorm that we went through this year, we're now seeing a surge in roofing permit requests. And so far this year, we've issued over 8,000 roofing permits. So quite a bit of an increase from what a typical year would be. And how are we dealing with that? Well, a couple of things that we've instituted. One is we've brought in a temporary person to help with data processing in terms of managing the permit requests. And then we've also recently hired a part-time person to go out and do nothing but roofing inspections as a way to try to keep up with the request to get those through. So we've added 2 temporary positions this year, and those will continue on as long as we need them, either into the winter season and even into next spring as we go forward into 2015. We've also recently worked with the HR department, and we've received approval from the mayor to reclassify our 4 existing building aides in building services and making them a permit technician, which will give them the training and the authority to handle more of the at-the-counter permits. And so that's going to be another way that will help free up our other staff that are called the plan checkers or plan examiners and give them more of a chance to do that throughout the day. So we're taking the initiative to really be proactive in dealing with the roofing permits. We believe that even after November, December, when we get into the winter season and next spring, we're going to continue to see that surge of roofing permits into 2015. But we're managing it through those different initiatives. Single-family housing permits are still being issued typically in one day at the counter, which is kind of unheard of around many communities. If you come in for a single-family housing permit, in many cases it'll take much longer than one day, and that's still what our benchmark has been. So those have not been impacted by the surge of construction activity so far. The next big one for us is commercial building permits. Again, how has the roofing, the others, ramping up of construction activity affected commercial building permits? Our year-to-date is that we've issued over 1,000 commercial building permits, which is about 25% ahead of where we were at last year. And the data that we've been working with finance shows that up to now, this year to date, for commercial building permits, that we've been able to issue those within 5 weeks of the submittal of the plans. That's the information that we have for 2014. And I'll repeat that again. And I should say that I'm going through this verbally with you today, but I'll be happy to put this in writing so that you have a record and that we can come back and review it again at a future date. So the data that we've been able to confirm up to this point shows that commercial building permits are being issued within 5 weeks of initial plan submittal. Currently, we have, as of today, 27 commercial plans or projects on our plan file, which is actually fairly typical for the fall season. It's customary also for this time of the year, because of the changing weather and contractors wanting to get started, that we will issue what we call partial permits, which means footing and foundation, or maybe the structural package. And then the final permits will be issued later on as the project gets farther into completion stage. So that's very typical for the fall season, is to get approval for those partial permits of footing and foundations. Of the 27 commercial plans that we have on file, we've just completed 12 of those through the plan review for either partial or full permit issuance. So of the 27, we've completed 12 of those for the full or partial permit issuance. And the other 15, I should say, again, we'll be working through that plan review to keep them moving forward in a timely fashion. So that's also the good news story, that we are working diligently to keep things moving forward because we realize that with the roofing permits and just with the normal surge in the fall construction and the fact that we're doing more projects than we did in 2013, how are we able to help keep up with the demand? And so that's the message that we're trying to convey to you and to the public today, is that we think we're doing a pretty good job. Another proactive item is that when you approved our 2015 budget for planning and building services, we had an additional staff person requested as part of that budget for another permit technician. And with our budget that we've got this year, we've received approval through HR to actually begin advertising for that position. And so we hope that within the next few weeks, 2 to 3, maybe 4 weeks, we'll have someone hired, actually this year, to also help with plan review or with the permits. That person will be behind our permit counter full-time, dealing with customer service and helping issue permits on a timely basis. So that's also going to help reduce the amount of time that our plan checkers are currently spending or would have to spend in the future on helping with customers at the front counter. And that's going to be a big, big help for us within the next few weeks as we get that position filled and then going forward into 2015. We've also recently met, actually within the last week, with members of the Home Builders Association as well as the Associated General Contractors, because we wanted to assure them and explain to them and update them, like we are with you today, what exactly is going on with our building permit process. Because of a lot of things that have been talked about or that have been the perception within the community of what's going on or what's not going on. And we want to discuss their concerns or the questions and to assure them that we're remaining very committed to meeting the needs of our development community as we move forward through this process. So the message that we want to give you loud and clear today is that we're very committed to doing everything possible to make sure that we keep things moving forward with our construction process and our permitting process. The finance team, the building services team is going to continue to work on identifying what we call appropriate service level indicators and also utilize our new technology, our EnerGov software system, to ensure that we're meeting the needs of our customers, as well as providing the citizens and you, the City Council, with more updated information and updates as far as how we're going forward with this process. I have Kevin Smith here today, maybe to give you, or if you have questions about a quick update on EnerGov, which is also a very positive story, has been going very well. We're now into week 4, and not only are we surviving, but we're making very good progress, and we believe that that system is going to be great for our community. And as we go into future phases that will allow online permitting, it's just going to continue to be more and more of a positive resource for our community. So again, a very quick, informal update, but we're keeping up with roofing permits, we're keeping up with commercial permits, we're keeping up with residential permits, and we want to make sure that the community knows, again, as we go forward, that we're doing everything that we can to ensure that we get these out on a timely fashion. So I'll stop there, see if you have any questions.
Councilor Staggers?
Yes, Mike, for a roofing permit, how much does that cost?
It's currently $20, and it's been that fee for quite a few years.
Okay. And how many permits are necessary to build a house, single-family house?
Typically one, a building permit.
Okay, so we just have the one permit, and as part of that's the roof, and part of it's what else? The foundation, part of it's...
Yep, the house, the structure.
Yeah, plumbing,
separate from an
electricity.
apartment building, but you're talking single-family, right?
Yes, right. Sure.
Yeah, we issue a building permit to construct a single-family house.
And then how much does that cost?
It depends on the value of the house. It's a sliding scale depending on the value of the residential structure.
How about a $200,000 house?
Just take a guess. How much would it be? How much?
About
$1,100,
$1,100,
roughly.
Okay. What if you would put your own roof on? You have to have a permit for that?
Yes.
$20?
If you replace your roof, are you talking the new construction or replace? For any roof replacement, it's a $20 permit,
Okay.
whether you're hiring a contractor or doing it yourself.
Okay.
And that includes an inspection that we do.
Okay.
And that's part of our building code requirement currently.
I may, since Councilor Staggers started that questioning, who can explain the process of inspection? I'm replacing my roof, I buy a $20 permit, or the contractor I hire does. What's inspected, when and how much time does it take to do this inspection?
Yep. Ron Bell, we've got him geared up to answer that question.
Thank you. Welcome, Ron.
I don't know about geared up. For a reshingle permit, it's a one-time permit, and that is a final inspection after the roof is already completed. Basically, our inspectors are looking at the drip edge requirements, the flashings, counter flashings, and those types of issues. I think there was an article in the paper that there was a reference that there was a drive-by inspection. It's not a drive-by inspection. Our inspectors actually get out, they from the ground, take a look at the reshingling that has occurred. If there's a homeowner there that has any questions or has a ladder, we'll go up on that roof and do a more cursory inspection. But it's a one-time inspection when we're all done.
How much time does that inspection?
Approximate amount of time could be 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
At the property?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Erpenbach.
Along that same line, then either Ron or Mike, talk about why we do building permits. Why do we only spend 10 minutes inspecting a roof when I'm not sure I understand the point. Why do we do building permits is my first question, and then I'll go from there.
To make sure that there is a level of life safety that's being maintained by the contractors that are taking the permits consistent with the building codes that we've adopted.
Okay, and we can figure that out in 10 minutes on a roof?
By taking just a look at the roof, a cursory inspection from the outside, yes.
What recourse then, if I might, Mr. Chair, what recourse then does a homeowner have if that inspection, it turns out that the 10 minutes wasn't good enough, the roof wasn't up to code or wasn't up to speed? What recourse does a homeowner have in a situation where something goes wrong?
Well, if we have a code violation, that contractor or the person that took out the building permit is required to correct that code violation. And that happens probably the vast majority of the times that we ever do find any code violations, that the person that took out the building permit is responsible to assure that the work is done in conformance with minimum building standards. So that homeowner is assured that if there is, for instance, flashing that is improperly installed where water is going to intrude within the building, that we would contact the contractor and require that contractor to install the flashings in accordance with minimum standards to assure that that leak does not occur.
Okay, as I said to you, Mr. Chair, I have had phone calls from people in the Central District long before we started this conversation. I believe that one of the reasons that we have a building permit is for consumer protection. I believe that it is the city's responsibility, if we're going to require that permit, that we're going to follow through with it, but I'm not hearing that necessarily. And so my concern is that, number one, if we're doing building permits and we're saying we're doing inspections, then are we really advocating for the citizen, or are we just getting it done to check it off the list?
We are totally doing this for consumer protection as far as minimum life safety standards. And we've been doing these types of inspections. I've been with the city for 37 years. We've been doing these types of inspections the entire time that I've been here.
Okay.
Councilor Staggers?
Yeah, I think what Councilor Erpenbach is trying to get at is, does the city take any responsibility?
I don't think so.
Because I've had personal experience of having a roof inspected and it turned out not to be very good at all.
Well, there are occasions when there's workmanship issues that our inspectors have to deal with. For instance, if the shingles were
Ron,
at an angle.
Do you mind stepping closer to the mic? It's hard to hear you. I'm sorry. Thank you.
For instance, if the shingles were curved or at an angle or whatever, it still will meet the manufacturer's specifications for installation. It still will meet the building code. It might not look pretty, but what our inspectors are looking for is to assure that it meets the installation of those shingles are in accordance with both the code and the manufacturer's installation instructions. So I can't assure you that we're looking at workmanship. We're looking at assuring that the roof covering will be installed in accordance with the way it's supposed to be installed.
If I could, Councilor Staggers, to answer that question too. I read the building code, and our building code ordinance very specifically hold the city harmless from being liable for approving something where the consumer or the homeowner could come back to the city and say, you inspected this.
I mean, if the city doesn't take any responsibility for anything, I mean, they can do a good inspection, bad inspection, or whatever they want to do. They don't have to worry about anything.
Councilor,
Go
ahead, Ron.
I'm sorry. But nevertheless, our building inspectors are assuring that the installation is in accordance with the minimum code standard.
But the important thing is the final result. Are we getting a leaky roof or
Okay,
not?
if there was a final result where there would be a leak in the roof, and that has happened not during the construction or during our inspection, but years afterwards, we will go back to the homeowner, and so many times it's completely covered up that we can't see that, but there's an obvious leak. Well, that doesn't meet code. So again, what we would do is go to the contractor, and hopefully the homeowner has already done their due diligence and contacted that contractor to make them take care of the problem, but a lot of times that doesn't happen. It's our inspectors, it's our people that get to that contractor and say, you've got a code violation, you need to fix it. And again, 9 out of 10 times, that contractor will tear up the roof to find out what the leak is in order to abate the code violation. So after that happens, if a contractor disregards an order from the building official to do that fix, that's when the bond comes into play. And the bond comes into play very rarely. This year, there's been 2 requests for a bond, and it hasn't come to fruition to access that. I believe the year before, there was like 2 more requests for that bond. So it doesn't happen very often that the bond comes into play. By far, what happens by far more often is that the code violation is found, the contractor is responsible, the contractor comes back and takes care of the problem in accordance with minimum standards.
Councilor Erickson.
I've got a handful of questions. First, piggybacking off of that, what if a storm chaser comes in? We know when we've got hailstorms, windstorms, you name it, we've got people coming in from out of state to do work. We know they have to come get a permit, they have to be licensed, post a bond. They do a shoddy job on my house and it doesn't meet minimum standards for code and they leave town. What happens then?
That's when the bond would come into play.
That would be the bond instance. And do they have to issue a bond for my house, his house, her house? It's one bond of $10,000 and 8 houses. $10,000 isn't going to go very far.
Well, this was put into place back in 1994 as a result of a hailstorm. Prior to 1994, the Home Builders Association pushed on building services for 3 or 4 years to request licensure of residential contractors. And we pushed back because we knew that it was going to be a very large thing to keep track of. What came out of that was this is the only license that also verifies that the contractor has liability insurance. Now, the liability insurance protects the homeowner if there are leaks and damages to the finishes. So that homeowner has the availability of that policy in order to activate that. But then, again, back in 1994, that was a negotiation with the home builders to make sure that those contractors that are doing work are all on an even footing. That if anybody's going to contract to do work, they're going to have liability insurance just like any other reputable contractor here in town. And then again, we also got the $10,000 compliance bond, which is a standard that goes all the way back to the 80s for electrical, mechanical, and HVAC contractors. There's not much question that that $10,000 liability or that $10,000 bond doesn't go very far nowadays and should probably be taken a look at being raised. I mean, we've got large contractors that have come into town with up to 12 crews. They come in and get 60 permits at a time. I'm sorry, but the law of averages is going to say that some of these roofs are going to leak, and hopefully that contractor will still be in town to take care of that. But if that contractor isn't in town, $10,000 compliance bonds are probably going to take about 1 or 2 roofs. And after that, after the compliance bond is gone, it's gone. And there's not much that we can help any future people down the road.
A couple more questions, if you don't mind. I have some questions in regards to the new software that was implemented, which unfortunately, in my opinion, I think it wasn't, nobody asked me, but that's fine because it doesn't matter, but a tough time to implement it at a busy time. Why not implement it in January or December when it's not as busy? So a few questions here. How many building permits are done prior to the new software? And how many are being done now with the new software? What lag time is there? So if there was 500 before and 250 now, or what's that time frame?
Well, we're going to issue a record number of building permits this year, and I don't have the numbers in front of me right now for the up to the go live, but post go live, and this is in the 3 weeks since we've implemented the software, we've issued a total number of 2,164 permits. 1,663 of those have been just building services alone. Our field crews, field staff have performed 2,561 total inspections, and we have also initiated 260 total code cases. So it has been a great 3 weeks for us. I couldn't have asked anything more of our crews. And this goes from the folks in the field doing inspections to the people behind the counter issuing permits to the back office staff doing data entry. In fact, I wondered the same thing after 2 weeks of having the EnerGov folks on site with us. I asked one of their project managers, so from your perspective, because they go from community to community, how did we do? And they said they consider this one of their most successful go-lives, that we have developed, I think, much stronger internal business controls. And for the citizens of Sioux Falls who don't do a lot of business with the city but want to be able to do things online, just wait for that, because that's coming next. So we're really excited about the way it's gone. And we're looking forward to the future advancements about online permitting, online plan review for contractors and developers. It's going to be rolled out here very shortly too. So I don't know that I would do anything different.
Could I ask a quick question that pertains to this? So in the 3 weeks since, you're very satisfied. Mm-hmm. How does that compare to the 3 weeks just prior to that?
I will get you that information, but again, Councilor Kiley, we are going to set a record number of building permits having been issued this year. And the fact that we're implementing a new software system in the middle of it just tells me that our staff out there is doing an incredible job.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Erickson, you said you had 2 more questions, and I'm going to move on.
A couple more. How long until the CAT program, the Citizens Access Portal, is live?
Probably within, I'd say, around 60 days. One of the things that the EnerGov folks recommended to us when they were here was make sure you're very comfortable with the system and then roll that out to your customers. So we've got a few permits we're going to start with, and as Ron mentioned, we've talked to the AGC, and we're going to have their members, some of their members, be testers with us for the e-review system as well, which I think a year from now we'll be able to report really good things back to you.
And am I able to, when that does go live, is it a one-stop shop I want to do? And since we're talking about roofing, I do a roofing permit for my house. I am contractor ABC. I go in to do a roofing permit. Do I get to do everything online, or is that more for just the citizens, not businesses? And if I am a citizen, can I do that all online where I can do an electronic signature? Can I do it all online so I don't have to come down to City Hall and do part online and then part at City Hall?
Our goal is that you're able to do as much online as possible. And we'll have future details that we'll roll out to you as well as our customers. But certainly, and maybe more so in the case of the people we do business with a lot, the people who pull 60 to 70 roofing permits at a time, that they, because time is money for them as well, that we can shorten their time frame for submittals and approvals and get them up on the roofs where they need to be. But one of the reasons we went with this system is that our old legacy system, it was AS400 mainframe based. We'd simply outgrown it. And I wouldn't necessarily laugh, but having been in public works when we had to face the same thing with our utility billing system, couldn't allow online bill payment, couldn't allow online account management by our citizens, by our customers. You make that big leap. And it is what every other industry in the country has done.
And I think in terms of the state of South Dakota, our community is going to be a leader that other people are going to be looking to us, say, geez, we should be doing it like Sioux Falls.
Councilor Jameson.
Thank you. If I could have Ron come up. Ron, last week in Spearfish at the South Dakota Municipal League, you were the one that everybody was requesting if you were there or not. So I don't know what or why that is, but everybody was asking, where's Ron Bell?
I was kind of busy.
Okay. Well, on another note, I've gotten phone calls, I'm sure a lot of the councilors have, regarding the building permit process for a certain building requiring 12 weeks of time before that building permit can be delivered. Is that true?
No.
I'm just going to go back to my introduction. Everything that I just told you the last 15 minutes was done to dispel that rumor. So that's why I'm saying no. I think a while back, as we got into this, there was some misinformation that got out, and what we're trying to do today is give you the correct information. Again, as I said earlier, as we've tracked our building permits, we're looking at that 5-week window. We've got 27 on file, and of those, 12 are already ready to go out. So that's why we're up here today, is to give you and the community the correct information. And that's what I'm doing today.
If I could, Mike, we had some very specific information from a contractor who I believe contacted the mayor also, who was told it's going to take 12 weeks for us to give you a building permit for the storage shed. Somebody told him that.
Yes, and again, that was a mistake. That permit has been approved, and we're moving forward, and that's the message that we're trying to give you today, is that the system is working, the process is under control. Whether you're talking roofing permits, housing permits, commercial permits. And so I'll be happy to put all this in writing that I went through today, and to keep you updated as we move forward in the next few weeks as well. Because again, I think it's a good news story that with a surge in construction activity, the surge in roofing permits, here's what's actually happening within building services today.
Okay. Councilor Jameson, Rolfing.
Somebody.
At least he didn't swear at me. Mike, I want to go with this commercial thing. I didn't quite understand what you had there. You had 1,000. We've had 1,000 commercial permits issued this year.
Year to date, yes.
Year to date,
which is about 25% ahead of last year.
5%. Okay, and we've got. Okay, that was a question I had. I thought I heard that, and then you said there's 27 of them left and 15 that we're working on.
We currently have 27 on file. That are requesting plan review and permits.
Is that part of the 1,000?
No, that's in addition to the 1,000.
These are the new ones. We've taken care of 1,000.
And every day it could be a different number, but as of today, it's 27. And of those 27, we've gone through 12 to be able to issue either a partial or a full permit. So we are not holding things up right now.
Okay.
Councilor Urbanbach and Councilor Kiley.
Well, I'd just like to hit on that term partial.
Ron wanted to say something on my question. I'm sorry.
All right.
You're talking about 1,000 building permits for commercial. That does include the reshingling of commercial buildings also.
Okay.
So that's all the permits. So
got it. Thank you.
Whether it's new or remodeling or renovation, yes.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
That's quite all right. No, what I'm hearing too, with the partial permits, that allows the individual that wants to get a project started to at least get their foundation work in and their framing work in, and then later on the permits for electrical, plumbing. And the mechanical can be issued, but they are not prevented from getting the project started and buttoned up prior to the winter months, correct?
That's very, very common for this time of the year. That would be happening even without the roofing permits or...
So in other words, they're not forced to wait for the entire process to work itself out. And then getting back to the roofing permits, I guess I understand the concern that some of the councilors have regarding the roofing permits, but I question would the consumer be better off with or without them? What's your opinion on that?
I believe that we should continue to issue those permits and do the inspections. And again, we've worked with the Home Builders Association, and we have a representative today from that association. But as we go forward with, if there is more discussion about it, we'll be happy to engage in that, the pros of why we think it's important to continue with that process.
The reason I ask that question is because right now I find myself asking, if it were me, would I feel better with a building permit for the roofing project or not? And I have to say that I would feel better having purchased that $20 permit as far as what I have to help me if I do have problems down the line. At least you could then verify, the city inspectors could verify that, no, this was not done to code. Otherwise, if we didn't have the permit, I wouldn't have you there to verify that. I would have to make that decision or clarification myself, or hire an expert to do it for me.
Is that true? Without a building permit, would we still have building codes that require it be installed in a certain way? If we didn't have a building permit, would a building inspector still be allowed to look at the roof that was done?
A building permit to build a house, but not a building permit to reshingle?
No, just for reshingling. If we didn't have a building permit process for reshingling, but we still have building codes that say it has to be done in a certain way, and you still have to have a license and a bond. If you come up there, if I request you to come and look at the job that was done, you would come and look at that job.
There's a provision in the building code. We've got a list of about 12 or 13 different types of work that does not require permit issuance. But the code says that those types of works that do not require building permit does not preclude you from still building it in accordance with minimum standards. So that's true. That yes, we could go do an inspection, but I'm telling you, that if a permit is not required, inspections will not be requested, and there will be a loss of control of the licensed contractor that does hold the bonds and does hold the insurance out there. We saw it in 1994, and that's the reason that we end up having the licensing with the bond, with the insurance for that.
I would also question, does the average citizen have the knowledge that you have? And I would suggest that maybe they wouldn't be aware of that opportunity for them to request that. I'm still hard-pressed to get away from this idea of issuing permits for the roofing projects.
Really, what the onus would be on the homeowner to verify that that person that they hire is licensed. They would have to look at our website, or they would have to call. On the other hand, what we have right now is any contractor with a building permit, they're assured that that contractor does have a license, does have a bond, because he has a building permit, hopefully prior to doing the work itself. So you're really assuming that a homeowner will take the time in order to verify that. I asked one roofing contractor, how often does anybody ask if you're licensed or insured? And they say maybe 1 out of 100. That's questions that some homeowners just don't even think about.
Councilor Anderson?
Ron, might as well stay up there, because I'm going to continue this line of discussion on permits too, and I totally agree with you. I believe permits are needed. If we didn't have permits, everything would fall onto the property owner. The total responsibility of making sure that whoever they hire is bonded, licensed, and working within the requirements of the city. Without that, the city knows nothing. And we probably won't know nothing until there's an issue. And at that point in time, if that is not a licensed contractor, they're gone. And nobody's going to be doing anything. So I do remember 94 and the discussion and things like that when this happened. And once again, it's another level of safety, and plus the other thing that building services will tell anyone coming in to get a building permit is to make sure that they are hiring a licensed contractor. But, that's the one thing, no matter what, whether you have a permit or not, it's still that homeowner's responsibility to make sure that they're hiring somebody that is going to be responsible with their property.
Councilor Erpenbach?
Two things. One that Councilor Erickson just reminded me is that it's pretty tough to sell a house if you don't have building parts of your home up to code. It's really tough to prove that that roof is okay by standards if it's not done with a building permit and hasn't been inspected by the city. The second thing I would say then is back to my question of Ron about the homes that I've heard about in Central District that are having issues with that inspection, because the thing I said to Councilor Karski about the building permits is that the inspection thing that was reported in the news recently is a different argument for me. It's a different conversation, because I think we're at a point where citizens don't understand that that inspection is only for code compliance. If they put it on there ugly, or they didn't do it quite the way that that homeowner likes, bummer.
We run into that all the time.
And so yes, the city is protecting you to a point, and I just want you to rewind the tape right now and go, how many times did Ron Bell say minimum standards? Understand the minimum standards are all in writing, and that's where that inspection is taking it. Just make that very clear to citizens.
Councilor Jameson.
This has been a very interesting conversation. A couple weeks ago, I brought this up, unbeknownst to me that Councilor Karski had been working on this issue for years. My point was about what if we had an emergency in our community, how would building services manage all these permits? A hailstorm is a slight example, but by all accounts, what I'm hearing is we're 25% over last year, which was a huge number that they've already issued. The 4 times number of roofing permits that were so far generated this year hasn't created a problem for staff. They've got new people coming on board, part-time people. They've got the intergov that's kicking in. From what I'm hearing, and from Mike Cooper, that there is no problem. And that the call that we received from an individual complaining about the delay was unwarranted. And, I guess until maybe more contractors call us complaining, or homeowners complaining about maybe the building permit process or the cost or the burdensome of nature of some sort, I think we're kind of pounding a dead horse here. I think it's been explained, at least sufficiently for me, that everything is working okay.
And again, we'll be happy to give you more updates, either with email or in person, whatever you think is necessary to continue to monitor how the process is going.
Councilor Staggers?
I guess one concern I think I have is that we have a lot of people who believe that, I'm going to get this contractor, he's licensed by the city and approved by the city and has a bond, it's going to be a good guy. Well, that's not always the case. I think it's probably more important for citizens to check on the reputation of these different contractors. That's probably more important than maybe, hey, do they have a license or whatever the case might be. And at the same time, this will put the property owner, to be more responsible, to make sure they are really getting a good person.
Mm-hmm. Councilor Kiley.
One last question, from me anyway. The performance bond or the compliance bond, how long is that good after a job is done? For instance,
you're talking roofing permits.
Right, like with the roofing permit, because with the ice barrier, for instance, the ice shield, let's say that we have 4 years where it's a good winter and we haven't had the buildup of ice dams and so forth, so it hasn't really been put to a test. Year 5 is a bad year and we have ice galore, and now it reveals that the ice shield wasn't installed. How long is that bond good?
Boy, I wish the city attorney was here, because we've asked that question about the statute of limitations. And
here.
Oh, here. Well,
in conversation in the back of the room.
The maximum that we've ever went back on a roof with a problem is 7 years.
7 years?
7 years.
That's the max.
Sorry, I was not paying attention. For building code compliance, I don't know off the top of my head, Counselor, but in terms of the standard of care, compliance with the building code, Counselor Kiley, is a is kind of the benchmark for whether a particular contractor would have followed the standard of care. So that would be in a negligence action, it would be 3 years, but construction defect cases can go 10 years, I believe. But again, I'd be happy to research it and get back to you. And again, my apologies, I was...
No, that's okay. That's okay. I mean, because I think we've already established the fact that the bond isn't enough to help out more than 1 or 2 homeowners anyway, so it's probably kind of a moot point.
Other questions?
Just one more.
Councilor Anderson?
Ron, with the bonds and that all being said, should we have different levels of setting up permits as far as the bonds? You know, when you have a single family coming in and asking for one permit, they're paying one price. You have a commercial coming in and wanting 40, 60 permits. Should their bond be a little higher than?
Well, the bond is issued to the license holder, the person itself. Just keep in mind that the residential contractor's license is just that, residential. That was set up in '94 to protect 1 and 2 family owner-occupied structures. There is no compliance bond in commercial construction at all on ordinance. There's no licensing for commercial construction. We have bonds for residential contractors, owner-occupied, all plumbing contractors, all mechanical contractors, all electrical contractors, and lawn sprinkler contractors, and those are just compliance bonds themselves. The real thing is that $10,000 goes back to licensing in the 80s. It's quite antiquated, and I think that you came up with the idea that it's $100 to get a bond, and that would cover $20,000, which gives you some added protection. But the last 2 times that we did access a bond, and it was last year, one was for a roof, and one was for a failed foundation, it took every bit of that $10,000 in one crack.
Okay. I'm going to probably discontinue our questioning. A lot of great questions. I kind of opened this can of worms, this Pandora's box of a sort. And I want to recognize our building services and the staff there. I mean, what you guys do is so vital and critical to making sure that we have safe homes, that the electrical and the plumbing and the structure, the foundation and everything is done. And I totally get that, and I understand that and appreciate the work you do, and I understand the amount of time and labor that goes into it. I still have an issue with building permits, and I'm going to probably expound on that a little bit. One is, I hardly believe it takes 10 minutes to inspect a roof, maybe if you're on the property, but you still have to drive there and get there. And if we're at 8,000 roofing permits, that's 4,000 hours. That's 2 full-time people just inspecting roofs. We added that person in this year with our budget, and I think the cost of doing that was around $120,000, if I remember correctly, for 1 inspector. For 2 inspectors, we're looking at $250,000. We might take in what, 160,000? It's a losing proposition for us. Going back to what you said, Ron, regarding the liability insurance, it does not cover workmanship. It'll cover, well, maybe, depends on the way the policy is written, but it doesn't cover workmanship. The bond the bond requirement is inadequate. We're assuming that because we have a requirement to get a building permit that they're going to do it. We also assume that because we have a requirement to get a license that they're going to do it. We find out all the time that they don't do either. And if they're not going to get a license, they're probably not going to get a building permit. From what I've heard too, that I am skeptical, as is Councilor Erpenbach and others, that we are truly doing the proper inspections on these roofs. I think that the $20 is a revenue source for the city without really doing what it needs to do to provide the true security that our citizens feel they're getting with a building permit. It is a false sense of security. I don't believe it's a true security at all. I'm going to go back to what Councilor Anderson and others have said. If you're hiring a contractor, know who you're hiring, and just because they say they're licensed and bonded, you can ask for proof. It's pretty simple. A building permit needs to be posted on the building. If you're getting a new roof, you buy a building permit, it has to be posted on the window unless something's changed. So if you're getting your roof done, you should have a building permit hanging on your house somewhere. But these are just some issues I've had. I will be bringing forth some things specifically requirements on the bonds. I write bonds in Minnesota and South Dakota, and I know Minnesota an electrical bond is 25 grand, in South Dakota it's 10 grand, or in Sioux Falls it's 10 grand. So we are way behind on some of these things and truly in protecting what our citizens want. So this will be a discussion that will most likely be ongoing for me. I don't know about everybody else. Some of you seem happy, but I'm not yet. So appreciate your time, gentlemen.
And I would just ask, as always, when there's issues that you want to work with us on,
I know how to
we'll
reach
be happy
out.
to get together and talk about it.
And you've been great about doing that. Thank you.
But again, the message today is that the system is working pretty well, and we're going to continue to move forward this year and into next year. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, gentlemen. All righty. Our next presentation is an event center update. Event center team, I think Mark Hodder or Dave Fifley will be leading us off. Our city attorney. Welcome, Mr. Fifley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dave Fifley with the City Attorney's Office. With your permission, Council Chair, I'd like to address the metal panel issue first. I will be presenting that portion. And then we have Terry Torkelson of the SMG organization who is here with his team and would like to present the council with some information on how the grand opening and various events have gone thus far at the facility, if that's all right with you.
Please.
Again, the council has requested an update on the metal panel issue. As we're aware from the July 22nd meeting, we had discussed that the construction manager, being Mortensen Construction, has a one-year period from the date of substantial completion, which would be August 1st, in which to remedy a situation where we have non-conforming work. The opening of the event center was not altering that responsibility in any way. So the fact that we are now using the building, and Terry will certainly go into how that use is going thus far, but again, it did not relieve them of any contractual responsibility to correct the non-conforming work. This is a standard provision in these contracts to allow a contractor, a construction manager, to remedy the work first. In this instance, the construction manager and the entire project team are aware that the city is not satisfied with the metal panels, specifically those on the west side of the building. These panels involve the exterior skin only, and again, they did not affect the functioning of the building. They do not affect the timing of when we were able to open the building and to enjoy its use. Back in July, when we talked to you, the construction manager, sorry, I'm used to saying contractor. The construction manager had presented to us information at that time. There would be 2 different mock-ups by early October. We relayed that information to you and the public at that time. Later, the construction manager told us that they would begin constructing those 2 mock-ups actually a little early, hopefully by the week of September 8th. Again, we presented that information to the council, and we also informed the public of that information. Now, after that announcement in August, the construction manager and its subcontractors determined that the on-site work crews should first complete various other work tasks on the project site in order to ensure that the building would open on time. This included some base metal work, completing a canopy, and some other tasks. It was their decision on how to utilize their work crews, and we respect their decision that they determined they would rather do that first to ensure the building opened on time rather than starting on the 2 mock-ups. Now, the city has a contract only with the construction manager. We do not have a contract with all the other subcontractors and players involved on the project team. As such, legally, we are technically on the sidelines while the construction manager works out a proposed solution and works out with their subcontractors how the solution will take effect. We have been very adamant that the City Council will not appropriate any additional funds towards any solution. They're going to have to come up with it with their own devices, come up with a solution on their own. What we are hearing now is that the construction manager is telling us that instead of 2 mock-ups, we will now have possibly 1 mock-up forthcoming, and that they also want to resolve their internal contributions to how the solution will take effect. As you can imagine, those types of discussions can take a little more time. Like you, we'd like this to be expedited. The construction manager is very aware we want this expedited. However, we are 2 months into a process that can be allowed to take up to 12 months. We will, of course, keep you apprised, and you'll be able to see a mock-up as it goes up when it actually does. The city's involvement going forward will be very simple. Whatever mock-up is done, the city will have to agree that it's a solution that will work and that we find acceptable. That's been relayed to us many times by the construction manager. We'll hold them to it. I would like to, with your permission, Chair Karski, if I could answer any questions you may have at this time. That's the information we have.
Regarding the metal panels, any
Yes,
questions for Attorney Fyfleet, Councilor Staggers?
Yes. Yeah, we were told that beginning the week of September 8th, they would start the 2 mock-ups. The week of September 8th passed, and nobody told anybody on the council anything was going on. Why didn't the construction manager relay that to you or to us? Or, I mean, now we don't even know when they're planning to do the mock-up, or do we?
I don't have that information on when the mock-up will actually be constructed, Councilor. Again, they have informed us that they are working internally on their respective contributions to the solution, and also working on trying to have one solution so that only one mock-up needs to be built for the city's approval and authorization to go forward. But again, those types of issues do take time. And at this point, I don't have a timeline on when those will actually occur, but the contract provides that there's that 1-year period to remedy the work. So the clock is ticking.
Yeah, I mean, can't we get the construction manager in here to tell us in more detail about this? I mean, that seems like a rather simple thing to do, to just give us some insight as to when this is going to happen.
I guess from what our city attorney's telling us, that this is a process that's being worked out between our construction manager at risk and the architects and the construction manager. I don't think we're part of the game yet, Councilor. I don't know why we need to be.
We paid for it. That's why.
And, well, we haven't finished paying for it yet either. They're not going to get paid for it until we're happy with the work that's done.
When are they supposed to get paid for it? A final payment?
There's still some final payment applications to come, Councilor, and I can't tell you off the top of my head when those would occur.
And also, too, what kind of guarantee do we have on the event center itself?
In terms of, there are various warranties as far as supplies, materials, workmanship, and it varies depending on what portion of the building you're talking about. It can be 1 year, it can be 10 years, or longer. It just depends on which particular portion of the building. Off the top of my head, I know you want to know the metal panels. I don't know off the top of my head what that warranty period would be.
Yeah, that's what I was interested in the siding. How many inspections did the city do of the event center? Just before we had the presentation here, we were talking about building code.
As far as all the code,
did we have
I'm sorry.
total? Yeah.
I'm sorry. As far as all the code inspections and so forth, I believe it was over 200 that Mike Cooper had presented to you a couple months ago, but I can't recall the exact number, Councilor.
200 inspections? Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Kiley.
Hopefully our construction manager will take into consideration that the clock is ticking and that possibly the mock-up that they come up with will be unacceptable. And there needs to be enough time to come up with an acceptable solution at that point in time. I guess, is there any way, if we get into the 11th hour and we're in mock-up 2 or 3 and we still haven't reached an agreement, what recourse do we have with that 10-month time frame or 12-month time frame?
Well, Counselor, in terms of what type of recourse we have, it depends what happens, but ultimately, we have to give them an opportunity to correct the work themselves. If they don't, we'll go in and correct the work ourselves, turn around, and we'll have a breach of contract action against them for the full price of the remedial work that we've done. What you need to keep in mind, and why these contracts are written with that standard language, is it's a matter of simple economics where it's far simpler and easier for the construction manager and their subcontractors who are already on site and have volume discounts, frankly, with suppliers and are able to effect these repairs far more cheaply than an owner, the city, coming in and doing it themselves, hiring a new subcontractor to do that type of work. So that while we do want it expedited, we also want it done right, and we want to give them a chance to do it because ultimately it'll cost us less money. And we don't want to go out and spend a bunch of money on doing the fix ourselves and then having to go back and chase that money.
And then ultimately it would cost them less money as well, obviously.
Correct. Yes, it's in their best interest, exactly.
Thank you. Councilor Anderson.
David, just talking about the panel displays that were going to be assembled and put in front of the event center. Did we not tell the public that we were going to be doing this? Did we not announce to the public that we were going to be doing this?
Yes, Counselor.
That's the only point I have to make, is that we did tell the public we were going to do this and we haven't. And it's disappointing.
It is disappointing, Counselor. I would agree. But again, we're relaying information that's given to us from the construction manager. And again, we're on the sidelines contractually while they work it out. They know they have a set timeline. They're well aware that we want it done yesterday. And we'll continue to remind them constantly that we want this done now.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Mark Cotter, or no, Terry Torkelson, I guess, SMG. Here to give us a brief update. A few weeks into here, into the event center opening. I know you've probably slept a few hours, but very few.
Yeah, actually, it's been a fun process. Yeah, we're about 3 weeks into the process. Obviously, Joan Jett was our first tune-up concert. We had a little over 5,000 people for that event. It was not one we expected to sell a lot of tickets to. We wanted to get that 5,000 person crowd in. Chad Stoner from Ovations is here. He can kind of go into some of the details and things they learned from it. We learned a lot. It's a very high-tech building. It's a very complicated machine as well, and it doesn't always operate the way engineers drew it out, so you have to do some tweaks. We did have contractors on site to help us with those things that we could fix immediately, and then there's a few minor things that we're still tweaking with lighting systems and HVAC systems. Once again, it's a big building. There's a lot of areas, and we learned at Demi Lovato that she likes her dressing room warmer than what we could do at the time. So little details. But we have had over 40,000 people go through the building so far for public events, and if you include some of the private ones, we've had even more than that. I think it's been very successful on the parking side as well. Really the key test was the night of Demi Lovato, which was the 10th, where we had 5,300 people in the event center for that. And then Howard Wood had 2 football games, the first game at 5 o'clock with 1,500 and the second game at 8 o'clock with 3,200 people, while Autumn Festival was going on next door in the convention center, and everyone found a place to park. I've communicated with Mark Miley from the school district. He was very happy as to how things went. We actually reserved a lot for them. But thanks to the crowd coming in at 5 o'clock and then our crowd coming in a little later, everything worked out very well. Jason Aldean obviously was the the large crowd, the large outflux, the egress, the parking could not have gone better. We had one of our parking people from SMG who handles the parking down in Lincoln, Nebraska, and she had no notes for us. Mike Cooper was instrumental in planning that, as well as Heath with the traffic department and Troy Lubers with the police department. It has not gone unnoticed to the public. We got a lot of positive comments. We had a few that people had some recommendations, but I think there was even an article in the Argus where the people in the neighborhood found that the night of Aldine, it wasn't a problem with people encroaching upon their space, and the ones that were there were respectful. So good news all the way around. We did run shuttle buses. And the night of Jason Aldine, we had over 500 users that took us up on that, which really helped alleviate some of the congestion. We actually went through and counted, and there were over 400 stalls on site that were not utilized during that event. So there was still plenty of parking available. No, that's what I get for using an iPad. It just died. The events themselves, we did have to do magnetic wanding for Jason Aldine. It's the first time we've ever had to do that. And it's, in my opinion, everyone who wanted to get in by the start of the concert got in the front door in time. So we had about 126 ushers and security for that event. We had, for the loadout, about 92 stagehands. So it was one of our larger calls. But rave reviews, I'd forwarded some of the emails we've received from both Live Nation and the show, Jason Aldine's tour manager, to Tracy Turback. Very complimentary of the building, how it was constructed, how it was designed, so I compliment the city on that as well. It's a great building to run, and I think we'll see a lot of success in the future. Does anyone have any specific questions?
Councilor Kiley?
You mentioned required to do the magnetic wanding. Who required that? Did that come from the promoter or from?
The show.
The show.
Jason Aldine, correct.
Okay.
You're seeing more and more of that. And to be honest, they're a little more particular about it with the larger shows in markets that have a looser concealed carry permit process.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Staggers?
Yes, I was just curious about the stars that we've had so far and the accommodations that we have for them. You know, those 3-star rooms that we have.
Yep.
What did they think about those?
I didn't ask them personally. We had no negative comments.
I was a little concerned about the quality of the fixtures and furniture. And
compared to what we had in the old arena, I think they felt it was a palace.
Okay.
You know, even though they're labeled star dressing rooms, some of them weren't always used for that because they wanted to put them in a different location. So, but no, everyone was very satisfied with the finishes in them. They found the fact that there was a light switch that you could turn on by the door to let people know you're in the bathroom so you don't open the door on them pretty funny, but they actually used it. So the only issue we had in the star dressing room was one outlet had some troubles and the electrician was on site and fixed it immediately.
Okay, because I guess I would be surprised just go into the room without knowing it was for a star. This is for a star.
Well, you have to think of, they work in buildings all over the country, all different types, and you know, we had Elton John who spent time in our old arena locker room watching a baseball game, and he was fine with that.
This is brand new, $117 million facility.
Yeah.
And
I guess personally, I don't have a problem with the finishes in them, or have a problem putting stars in them.
Okay.
Councilor Anderson?
Couple questions. And I don't know if it'll be for you or Mike on this one. Dedicated bus parking for when we have these larger events and that, when, like, say, a tour bus or something comes in.
Correct.
Do we have any type of plan for a dedicated bus parking so that those buses, drivers can park somewhere and sit waiting for their...
That was actually Shannon Verhey was probably the person from the city who led that specific part of the parking process. We actually use an area out back of the kitchen mechanical area of the convention center. We bought 6-foot high, what's called bike rack barricade. It's a heavy duty barricade that's 6 feet high. We build a compound. There will be a permanent fence installed in one area, and then we can go across the truck loading dock as well. So for Jason Aldean, we had 13 buses. Generally, a tour won't use the drive-in overhead door, so we parked 2 buses, the 2 star buses up there. But just from doing that, we realized we can park up to 8 buses in that area as well, and we still had room for more. So it's a compound we create, but it was very functional.
Okay. And then the last question's probably for Ovations.
Okay. Any other questions?
Councilor Jameson, I know, had questions.
If I could, I was going to reply that all the star rooms that I've been in around the country when I travel, this is a pretty good one.
Good one?
Okay. I was going to just say, I've heard a lot of good comments about the events that have occurred, hockey and the concerts. A few comments here and there about other things, but recently, last Sunday, I went to the Vikings beating by the Detroit Lions, and I've never been to a game, never been to the University of Minnesota Stadium. So prior to our trip, I went onto the website and tried to figure out, well, where should we park? How do we get there? So I watched some things and learned how to do it, and experienced all the long lines that everybody gets to, I guess, when they go to a game. But so I reviewed your website, kind of like thinking if I was somebody from Aberdeen coming to Sioux Falls for a concert, how would I learn where to park? And if I could just give you any advice, it would be to maybe work on some things on your website to help educate more about like where the bathrooms are, even though I know you have them.
We're still currently working on our You Are Here style maps that go throughout the building. We have some temporary ones up, but the permanent ones, we're making sure architect as well as ADA and everyone has had a chance to review those. And once those are complete, they'll go on the website immediately.
Perfect. That's about all I could really recommend is enhancing that so strangers to our community have a way to kind of visualize and maneuver through the building. A little video about the process of the wanding, the bags that you.
Are you offering to help with that video?
Well, I could. I do happen to have a
little drone. We have a drone that could help you.
There's a lot of questions that could
Correct.
get answered with a video. Just for a lot of people who've never been, I think you could benefit from it. Just from what I saw, but so far, good job.
Okay, thank you.
And if I could just piggyback on that, Terry, I had calls from, as a representative for the Northwest District, from people that live out there that were concerned. They heard about, they're going to be doing different things with parking and exiting and getting out of there, and, concerns that, may be justified, but I just cautioned them. I said, let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Let's see how it works. Call me back Monday after the Jason Aldean concert and let me know how it goes. They did, and they said I couldn't have had it any better. So they were very happy. The people that I talked to that live out there were very happy and very impressed with the way everything, Mike, that went from parking and traffic flow. So just to congratulate you. I know that doesn't happen by accident, so thank you.
It took a lot of planning, and Mr. Cooper and his team they were very instrumental in making that a success. So. And Jason Aldean, we announced it in the news. From what we budgeted, we made 2.5 times more profit than we expected. So far, everything that we've done, our revenue streams have been substantially higher than what we expected. So that's always a good sign.
Excellent. And I think Councilor Anderson has a question for Ovations, the food service side of the equation.
Good afternoon.
Introduce yourself if you don't mind.
Chad Stoner, General Manager with Ovations Food Services.
Thank you. I was at the Joan Jett opening, and I heard from a few people, and it may be funny, but they said that the arena had something the event center didn't: tomato juice.
Tomato juice.
For their beer. So if that's something you can look into.
Sure.
I just thought it was. I thought it was a little funny, but if we're going to be serving beer, there's another revenue stream for you.
Absolutely, appreciate that.
Any other questions? Councilor Erickson.
I was at the Jason Aldean concert, and I know each artist has the right to say you have to be wanded, you have to this, you have to this.
To do what? I'm sorry?
To be wanded, or,
Oh.
and one of the requirements that he had talking to some of the people with SMG was that you had to dump, everything had to be dumped in a cup.
Correct.
And some of the people were, workers were, you could tell, getting frustrated because there was not enough garbage cans for them, and their buckets were full, and I'm sure that based on the statistic we just received, that there was plenty of that being consumed. So that would just be a suggestion. I know that from some of the staffing and some of the people that were there as well were looking for garbage cans, random, but it's certainly something that probably wasn't maybe thought that they
Right, we
needed
have taken steps in adding more garbage cans in specific areas of the concourses when we have a show like that where it's an all-pour show. It does slow up service a little bit, but it's one of those things that's kind of out of our hands, but we kind of deal with it as we get that information.
All right, gentlemen. Oh, Councilor Staggers.
Yes, could I ask one question of Mark Cotter?
Mr. Cotter.
Mark Cotter with the Office of Public Works.
Hey, Mark, Attorney Fifley said that our primary concern with the siding is the west side. I guess the southeast side doesn't look that good either with the bulging. Is that correct? We're just going to focus more on the west side? Or?
We are focused on the west side, Councilor Staggers.
Okay, but then when we talked about the mock-ups, the mock-ups were to be on the southeast side, weren't they?
Southwest.
Okay, now.
Right next to Western Avenue. Right where we were actually standing out there that day. That's in the southwest corner of the building.
That's called the southwest corner, okay.
It is, yeah. I know that the facility or the campus doesn't necessarily run true north, but it would be more on the westerly side.
So then the question arises, why are we just concerned about the west side? Because we have the siding over on the east side, is that?
That's been the area that we've identified as nonconformance, and so that's where our focus has been.
It's bulging on the east side too.
I think certainly as a project team, our focus at this point is on the west side.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Cotter.
Thank you.
Councilor Erickson wants the last question.
No question. I just wanted to, I guess, make a statement. We had heard some testimony about not being able to give a tip at the event center. I talked with my husband, and I've talked to SMG as well. When there are not tipping jars, so to speak, but there are capabilities to tip with your debit card and to leave money on the counter at any time. So there is a way to tip. If anybody ever chooses to tip, at any point you can tip your bartenders, wait staff, however it is. I thought it was very easy to do as well. When you pay with a debit card, it gives you the option of 10%, 15%, no thanks, or other amount. We clearly didn't have a problem when we were doing it, so I was just going to pass that statement along that you can certainly tip if you'd like to tip your staff.
Just to also address your comment about garbage cans, we do have what's called the Day 2 list, which is items that we didn't address the first time around, and that there are funds still available, that once we get through some other processes, we'll see what's left. And we are currently prioritizing those with the city as to what's important. Garbage cans is one of those things amongst a few others that will just help with the process of running the facility. Because like I said, you don't know what's going to happen until you put 11,000 people in there. So
hopefully when we're referring to garbage, we're also considering recycling.
Correct, and we have been working with the city's recycling coordinator as well as Jake from Millennium Recycling and Novak as well.
Okay, I have a gavel and I'm going to use it. Meeting adjourned.